Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Politics with Flow. I have not done this in a long time, but I am going to do this simply because this is a topic that came up and it's very important to my community, specifically to the Latino male community, right? So now, with the election results over, it's been over a week now, it's pretty obvious that Trump has secured the victory. And some people are asking, well, why, right? And a big reason why is because the Latino male population voted for Trump. The majority, as a matter of fact, voted for Trump. And as I was thinking about this topic and thinking about doing this video, I did come across folks who were asking, well, why? Why would Latinos, out of all people, vote for Donald Trump, right? If you look at the last election where Trump was trying to be reelected against Biden, right? There's a huge jump in the percentages, right? So in 2020, Latino males voted for Biden. About 59% of them voted for Biden, sorry. And in 2024, it's not even close. 54% voted for Trump compared to 36% in 2020. Now, I have two theories as to why this happened, right? This is just my theories. This is not a fact. There's no evidence to back this up. But I do have a strong reason why I feel the way I feel, right? Let's go back to 2020. So in 2020, you have a lot of things happening. You have the pandemic, obviously, taking place. People losing their jobs because of the pandemic. Some folks were still working. But it was just a very tumultuous time, and individuals, they didn't really know what was going to happen, right? And since Trump was president at the time, it was pretty easy to blame it on the president, right, who happened to be the person in charge. It didn't help that he already had rhetoric that was anti-Latino, that people would label as anti-Mexican, anti-Latino, right, because of the things that he has said. And he's not guilty of it because of the things he has said, right? So I can see why Latinos in 2020 did not vote for Donald Trump. That there was no reason as to why they would, right? It just crumbled, right, under his presidency, right? Whether you want to blame it on him, that's a different story. Point is that Latinos had no faith in Trump. And again, the rhetoric that he had already spewed did not help the situation, right? So what changed in 2024? Why would Latino males all of a sudden become more inclined to vote for Donald Trump? Because his politics or his rhetoric hasn't changed much. He's still very strong borders, right? He's still very what people would consider anti-Mexican, anti-Latino sentiment, right? So what would be the change? What happened that made people say, no, I'm going to go for Trump, right? These are my theories. I think it's no secret that most women are pretty liberal, I would say, overall in the U.S. The majority of them, I would say, are pretty liberal. So they're more willing to vote for a woman, in this case, a woman of color. And what Trump represents to them is not something that they would vote for, right? And now, on the other hand, a lot of the rhetoric that is spewed today is, I would argue that, is very anti-male or anti-Latino. And how would I justify that? What argument do I make to say that, right? A lot of women in our community, in the Latino community, are very liberal, and they do subscribe to very liberal agendas or values, right? For example, abortion, right? Feminism, things of that nature, right? And even though these things sometimes do apply to Latino males, I would say that the majority of Latino males are pretty conservative when it comes to these types of things, right? So I would argue that most Latino males are pro-life, not pro-choice. Not necessarily anti-abortion, but more pro-life. And considering that the Democratic Party has not been like that in a while, I would say since I could remember, I don't think they've ever been, you know, anti or pro-life, whatever. That is not a value that Latino males would subscribe to, right? Second thing is the LGBTQ community is very, very popular with the Democratic Party. At least they pander to them, right? I would say that. I would argue that. Not so much that they like them. I mean, I would say that they definitely pander to them. And a lot of the times, again, in the Latino male community, this is something that maybe a lot of Latino males don't feel included in. And I would even argue that they even feel attacked, right? Because feminism and the LGBTQ community are very anti-patriarchal. And what is very prevalent in our community? The patriarchy, right? What people call the patriarchy. And this word has been thrown around so much now for so long that it's become a negative connotation. But for many males in our community, being the patriarch is a sign of pride, right? You are the provider, you are bringing in the bread, you are the sometimes commander in chief or the leader in your family, right? So if these things are threatened, if these things are not part of your family, then you might not subscribe to that type of rhetoric, right? So that is another reason why I think Latino males decided to go with Trump, because Trump, I think, represents that, right? To some extent. You might not like everything he says or might not even agree with most of the things that he says, right? But he is able to speak his mind, and because he's got money, because he doesn't have to worry about being canceled. I think a lot of Latino males can relate to that. I think a lot of Latino males feel like in today's society, they're not able to speak their mind. One, they're already, a minority. And two, a lot of the women in their community, right, might see us as the enemy to some extent, right? And what do I mean by that? Because again, we are very stuck to these traditional roles in our community that sometimes this plays a problem, right? So a lot of Latino males today, I would argue, feel like they are being outcasted, not just by the mainstream society, but also by the women in our community, right? This is why it's becoming more common for Latina women to marry white men. And I'm not here to say that there's something wrong with that or I'm against it, but it is more common, right? As women become more educated and become more influenced by these white liberal agendas, they begin to question a lot of the things that their fathers and sometimes their boyfriends or even husbands have done, right? So I think that also has played a role as to why Latino males decided to go with Trump, and it's becoming more common in our communities. You can even argue that this is something that happened in the Chicano movement, right? And I made this case before. I have made this argument before that the Chicano movement essentially did not reach its pinnacle because of the minor disputes with feminism and also the LGBTQ community. Again, I'm not fighting against them, or I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those communities or that it shouldn't exist, but that essentially did contribute to the fall of the Chicano movement. And I think today Latino males do feel the same way, at least for the ones that I've spoken to that do not subscribe to liberal agendas, specifically white liberal agendas, because let's face it, a lot of these things are that, right? And a lot of Latino males feel like their culture is essentially under attack because of that. Not only by the right white conservative, but now also by the white liberal. So a lot of us feel like we're somewhere in the middle and we're stuck, right? So I believe that influenced a big part of that as to why Latino males voted for Donald Trump. And lastly, this is a short video. I'm going to stop it here. The most obvious one a lot of them are saying that it's because of the economy, right? Clearly, inflation under Biden has increased. And whether you want to blame it on him or not, that's that's another discussion, right? But the whole point is that Latino males are looking for something new, right? So that is my argument. This is why I think that they decided to vote for Donald Trump, regardless of what he says, regardless of the rhetoric that can be considered anti-Latino. I think overall, a lot of them do relate to him because they wish they were able to say what he's saying, right? Because a lot of us do not have power, let's face it. A lot of Latino men do not have power and are feeling even more powerless because of the changes in our communities, because a lot of women in our communities are being empowered. And to some extent, some people feel like that is disempowering the males because the traditional roles that we had for so many years, for so many centuries, are no longer needed in our communities. So I think this has influenced Latino males to go a different direction. And it's interesting to see that this could play a role and continue to divide our community, right? As a Latino male, right? So those are my thoughts on that. I just wanted to share that. I wanted to talk about that because I think it is very important to note this, and we'll see how it goes. I'm not too afraid of some of the rhetoric that is being spewed by Donald Trump because I think he was already in office for 4 years, and I know that the whole deportation thing is an issue, right? But it has not been an issue. Well, I mean, it's been an issue for a long time. It's never not been an issue, right? Under the Obama administration, it was an issue, and it's continued to be an issue, right? So I don't see that being a bigger issue under his administration. It's going to continue to be what it was. It's probably going to get more media coverage, obviously, because of the things that he says, but we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, things don't get too bad for us here, because a lot of folks, like I said, decided to vote for Donald Trump. So, we'll see. On to the next one. Peace out.
Shitting on your progress, like left or right, which is right, like join a group, then pick a fight, like they tell you what to like. I'm saying too much like